Another walk-on.
Anytime we get messages involved, it's okay.
I read everything the other night.
I read it, I just normally like to check the office to do.
You know what, it still drives me crazy that right up here, there's supposed to be something.
Did you
that says
change,
where this
do you have notes about
Agenda.
minutes? Are they maintenance or capital?
just like
More
that.
trouble.
My son's taking.
More trouble.
Be there.
You can cause trouble wherever you are, so it doesn't matter.
It's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
I know. I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, long time no see.
This must be 7A.
Hours.
Kind of stuffy in here.
No, we had a planning commission meeting yesterday.
This is a skinny packet. This
I don't think she's
Yeah, it
laughing
really
at you,
is.
do you? You think she was laughing at you? He says, I'm busy eating this cookie. I'm not going to eat my own that.
You know, John
No
was
sense
saying,
of humor.
Good
No
day,
sense of
Mr.
humor.
Brake.
I'm going to come up and rave and destroy our country. Then I'm going to go back to the grave.
Today, Rick? I am well, thanks. You reminded me to turn my phone down before it rings in the middle of a
You
meeting.
knew as
Did you
soon as
hear
it
from
became
Cheryl?
entitlement.
Thank you for saying that.
Without a call, James Dean.
Yes.
We should call him James Dean. He's rebel.
Oh, Lord. Don't encourage him.
Was I'm holding a hammer.
Don't hit yourself with that thing. Yeah. Yeah. Bonk.
I did.
Are
I
you
did in
trained
the
to
head.
use that instrument?
But
Are you trained to
He
use that?
swings it hard enough, the head will come
I've done it a few years. Yes, ma'am.
throw it one of us.
He doesn't need to. He's got his whiskey in the cup. Hey, Jim, that's not fair. They'll want me to share.
You're right.
Hey, you're all
Not
by
the straws.
yourself.
Does this tell you something that you're right there and all the rest of us are back here?
Brian isn't here. He'll sit up here. He always
Get a
does.
microphone. Two of them.
I thought he was in the room.
They didn't show me.
We're,
That's my magic word. Damn. 30 more pounds to go. Good for you. I wore my mess dress for my daughter's wedding. Oh, yeah? And I did not have to alter it.
we're going to call the August 2nd meeting of the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority Citizens Advisory Committee to order a little bit early. We've got two special guests today, and in order to helpfully get them out a little earlier, we are now in order. All members present are, both alternates and regulars, are voting members. We do have a quorum. If you all have had a chance, I hope you look at the agenda. It is a little bit out of the ordinary, and it is for cause. Also in an effort to get our two guests out of here as quickly as possible. So I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Okay, I got Ed and Tom and Joan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes of last month's meeting?
Yes.
Move adoption as presented.
Second.
That was Joan and Tony. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right.
You're gonna read the,
Public comments.
I'm getting.
you're gonna read the statement?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did public comment out of order. Thank you, Rick. All right. We open the floor every month to public comment on items not on the agenda. And quite frankly, I don't see anybody from the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to make comment? So noted. All right. I would like to introduce two people to explain and answer questions that you might have about the November 7th ballot measure, and the draft IGA amendment, which would be amendment number 3, I think. Is that right, Rick? The IGA would be number 3, amendment number 3?
It'd be the second amendment, original first and then second amendment.
Okay, it's the second. Sorry, second amended. The two gentlemen that are here are Merv Bennett, Chair of the PPRTA, and Mark Waller, Vice Chair. And Mr. Waller is the lead on this, but both gentlemen are available for questions that you might have, and it's agenda item 5, if you haven't paid attention. And it is in your packet. It's a cover sheet with the draft of the ballot, and item number behind it is the IGA. And before we start, I'd like to read something to you. Chairman Godfrey and his wife had a little miscommunication, and Jim was going to be here, but his wife made reservations and had tickets purchased, so Jim couldn't make them. And he made some specific questions about this. And it just goes, no message selected. It was there. Tom and Rick. I had it already up here.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
That was his email.
Okay.
This is the same one.
Yeah, I won't mark his up today. Jim had questions or comments on 2 issues besides this. I'm only going to refer to this item so these gentlemen aren't tied up. He asked that there be clarification that the executive committee did not make this, or the executive session of the board did not make this decision to go forward with the ballot without advice of counsel. And I personally don't see any need to have the words that you had counsel there. You don't have an executive session that I'm aware of without counsel present. And I'm not aware of any public meeting that doesn't take, legal advice. Mark, I see you've got a question. Basically, he would like to see the memo that stated the board put it forward to the county to reserve a place after an executive session with a lawyer, with the lawyer. And but Rick's offered to do it, so it's up to Rick. Anyway, the next one I'm not going to read to you intentionally because I don't want it to influence any of you and your questions. That next 2. He also has a question about the draft IGA. The question about the draft IGA is section 5.1.1, and Rick's fortunately provided me with a memory that I needed. There is precedence for projects to be listed under joint or whatever. There were 6 projects, if I'm not mistaken, on 4. There are 4 projects that were voted for as joint projects between various governments. The majority of them were between the city and county. So there is precedence. It's nothing unusual. And it might affect how you read the drafted ballot issued. And with that, I will open the floor to questions of anybody or a presentation if Mr. Waller would like to first.
Yeah, I mean, if it pleases you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to take a couple minutes to sort of explain how we got where we are and what my thought process is moving forward. And first, again, I'm Mark Waller. I'm El Paso County Commissioner for District 2, which is eastern El Paso County, north and eastern El Paso County, and I'm also the President Pro Tem of the Board of County Commissioners. I've been on the County Commission now for just over a year and I think 2 weeks, and thus I've been on the RTA board now for a year and 2 weeks. And in addition to that, I've been the vice chair of the RTA board now for about the last 6 months. How we got here, and first I'd like to say I'm terribly sorry for the lack of process on my part for not getting this idea to the CAC, the RTA CAC, prior to talking about it with the board. There was no, slight at all intended. It was simply a lack of understanding of process on my part, being a fairly new member, and also, quite frankly, a timing issue. We're trying to get to the November 17 ballot, and so it was an issue we needed to start moving on sooner rather than later. So why is this right to do? Why am I pushing on this? I came on the RTA board, and we have issues come before us where we approve various projects that come before us that are either on the priority list or in certain circumstances, maybe they're being done with maintenance funds or some other sort of funds, and they're issues that get approved. Well, I've been dealing with my complaints from my constituents, significant complaints about this gap section of I-25 and how it's not getting done, it's not getting fixed. And only about 2 miles of that project fall within El Paso County's jurisdictional boundaries, but you know what? That doesn't matter to my constituents, and quite frankly, not just my constituents, but all the folks that live in El Paso County. They want something done. They want to get this project moving forward and completed. There are approximately, this is data from CDOT directly, 3 accidents every single day on the gap section of this road. It is a public safety issue, and it is definitely an economic issue. Now, I'll also go on to say this is an issue that should be resolved and completed by the state and federal government. But that is not happening. We're not going that direction. Now, I can tell you, I don't have one bit of authority over transportation projects as they're related to the state and federal government. But you know what I have? I have authority over what the county does, what El Paso County does. And I have, to a degree, some authority over what happens through the RTA. My constituents know that they pay taxes. They don't care where those taxes go. They don't care if it's local money, state money, federal money, or RTA money. They know they pay taxes and they want to see results. And in this particular circumstance, they want to see results on I-25. We have the ability and we have the power to get this project moving the right direction. Now, why is RTA money right for this? Why should we put this in it? And I've heard several times, this is RTAs for local projects. I get it. I understand that, and I agree with you. But if we don't put local commitment into this, it is never, ever, ever going to happen. We can stand on our local principles all we want, and I-25 is not going to get fixed. It's not going to happen. So again, why is RTA the right kind of money? I'll tell you why I think it's the right kind of money. As we're sitting here in our meetings deciding projects that we're going to approve or disapprove, I've seen, not countless, but several projects come before us that are not currently on an RTA list. Yet somehow they get funded with RTA money. Pedestrian bridges across sections of railroad track. Driving bridges up in my district in eastern El Paso County. And I said to myself, as I'm sitting there and these things are being approved with RTA money, I say to myself, what would my constituents say about this? Would they say I-25, fixing that, is more important than a pedestrian bridge? You know what the answer is? Hell yeah, that's right. That is far more important. Well, I-25 is not on the RTA list. And so we need to figure out how to get it there. So just to be sure, I had a pretty good feeling of where my constituents were, but just to be sure, I decided to go out and do polling. And I polled the question specifically. Didn't mention pedestrian bridges or anything of that nature. I just went out and polled the question and said, look, do you, voter, taxpayer, believe that RTA money should be used to fix I-25? 88%. 88%. Write that down. 88% of the people said, yep, that's an appropriate use of RTA money. Now, if we had Abraham Lincoln reincarnated and running for something, he wouldn't poll at 88% approval right now. That's a big deal. We pulled a lot of other stuff as well, and we went through and did a bunch of analysis on this to figure out why that number was so high. We came up with two things. Number one, the people of El Paso County know and understand that this is a problem, and it's a problem that needs to be fixed. And they don't care who fixes it as long as it gets done. And number two, they trust the RTA. And they trust the RTA because the RTA has a list, and we generally follow the list and work through the process correctly. So that brings us to where we are today. How do we make this work? And I think, there was a way to finagle it around and do this with some sort of maintenance funds, but that wouldn't be right to do. Let's put it on the list, and let's make it happen the right way. So here's the proposal. And by the way, I don't think RTA should fund this project. And that's not what we're looking for RTA to do. We're looking for seed money to get the project moving in the right direction. So my goal was to say, we've had RTA dollars coming in over budget by a fair bit. So if we could just for a couple years in a row get maybe $5 million from the RTA, as long as we're coming in over that real budget and those dollars are there, let's put that in as seed money to make this project work. And if the RTA can put money into it and make it work, I think I can get some county money in this as well. My goal, as an El Paso County Commissioner, we've got Tabor excess, and we're going to go to the voters and ask them, or I think we're going to go to the voters, and ask them to keep Tabor overages and put a significant portion of that towards I-25 as well. I think we can develop $25 million in local money to get this project moving the right direction. I took that to CDOT. Said, look, how far does this get us down the road? And they told me they can turn that money into $75 or $100 million just by grants through the federal government, matching off of our $25 million investment. Then I went to my friends in Douglas County and said, look, if we're going to be making this commitment, 10% of the projects in our district, what can you do? We're starting to get them down the road to putting money in this project. There's an opportunity to bond against a potential one lane that is going to be tolled. So not the whole section, but the way they did it on 36, tolling a lane. They can bond against that as well. Well, all of a sudden, we're getting there. We're moving this project in the right direction. And it gets done sooner rather than later. $300 to $500 million project. But if we don't get going on it now, that $300 to $500 million goes up the further we move down the road. So that, I'm passionate about this. I wish we didn't have to put local money in it, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing for all of our constituents, and I think it's the right thing for our community. It's the right thing from an economic perspective, and it's the right thing to do from a public safety perspective. And so once again, I'm terribly sorry I didn't get this to y'all before we took it to the board. That's my fault. That's my mistake. But it doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. So, I'd love to have your support moving forward to make this happen. So what do we need to do from an RTA perspective? Two things. We got to get it on the ballot. That works a little bit different than amending the IGA. That's the other thing that we need to do. So get it on the ballot and amend the IGA. How do we get it on the ballot? It takes a simple majority vote of the board to put the issue on the ballot. I think, and as Merv will get up and say, I think we're moving very positively in that direction. That's actually the easy part of this. The tough part is then amending the subsequent IGA. And how do we do that? There are 5 member governments, as you all know, for the RTA. Each one of those member governments effectively has veto authority over amending the IGA. It just simply means every member government has to vote yes in order to amend the IGA. So it has to be a unanimous 5-0 vote in order to amend the IGA. And to get that vote from those member governments, 2/3 of each of those member government bodies has to vote in agreement to amend the IGA. So 2/3 of the Colorado Springs City Council has to agree to amend the IGA, and then they cast their vote yes. 2/3 of the Board of County Commissioners has to agree to amend the IGA, and then count that vote as yes, and so on and so forth. So that's what we're trying to do. I think it's the right thing to do, and with that, I think I've talked a little bit too much. I turn it over to Merv or to questions, however we want to do this.
Thanks, Mark. I'm Merv Bennett. I'm on Colorado Springs City Council, and I'm chair of the PPRTA board this year. It's my second time to chair this. I've been a bad boy, I guess, that I have double duty. Well, I want to, before we do anything, I want to thank you for your good work. You know, when our PPRTA board meetings don't last as long as your CAC meetings do. And it's because you do all the hard work. You do all the deep dives, and so by the time it comes to the board, it's been fully vetted. And I deeply appreciate that, because when it comes with recommendation from you all, it means a ton to me, because I trust the work that you're doing. One of the things I wanted to tell you about why I agreed to put it on the agenda at our last meeting is that to get on the ballot in November, all we did at the last meeting was reserve a spot. We did not vote to put the language on the ballot. We reserved a spot so that we could come to you first prior to the board making a decision. So that's all that decision was, and the 27th of July was that deadline for that. So we had to make that decision that day just to get it on the spot. When Mark came to me and made this recommendation, one of the things that I told him is that the city, of course, would not support putting a single dime to this project unless the voters approved it as a PPRTA project. And he agreed to that. He knew that as well. So he wasn't trying to sidestep anything. He knew that. And I said, you know, and the way to get things done is that we all need to sit down and work together. So we have, Mark and I have met with the mayor and his staff. This is something that we feel from an economic point of view for the city of Colorado Springs and El Paso County, that the widening of this stretch is critical to us. I know personally my son-in-law works in Denver. He has to drive that every day. And if you've, I'm sure you all have driven it. I hope you've never driven it on a Friday afternoon, because because that is the worst time to be on the road there. But this is an important issue. When we talked with Mark, and this is how the ballot language is being set up, we said we support this, provided that it does not, that it comes out of dollars that are in excess of the budget. So if there's only, now we're willing for it to be up to $5 million per year for 2 years. But if only $2 million over the budget comes in, it would be $2 million. So there's, it's $5 million would be a maximum that would do it. We said that because we did not want to be adding in projects that could diminish our current A list already. I was telling Rick, the city has taken some dollars from the Centennial Extension in 2018 to use for the West Colorado. Now, we were able to do that because the Centennial Extension has a landfill in it that has to be cleaned up before we can start construction. So it was that wasn't damaging the Centennial Extension because the landfill has to be dealt with before we can do that construction. Well, this is the same thing. We would only agree to dollars that are above and beyond what's budgeted for that year, and only for 2 years. We are supportive of this. We think it economically has a great benefit. The dollars would be restricted to the 2 to 2.5 miles in El Paso County. They could not be used for outside that. We went through this before a couple of years ago, if you remember, on County Line Road. We covered the south half of County Line Road, and Douglas County had to take the north half of County Line Road. So we've been through these types of situations before. Our attorney has helped us work it out. This information and the things that I've told you has gone to our city attorney. They've sent back some recommendations that I've mentioned to you about the maximum $5 million has to be above and beyond what's already budgeted, and they put that into the agreement, and they put that into the new IGA. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't know of any negative implications on it right now. To me, this is a critical project for us, but the citizens need to affirm that it's a critical project, and that's what we're asking for. To me, it's as simple as that. Yes.
Commissioner Waller spoke to the issue of the IGA being killable by anybody, if you will, vetoed. Two separate but linked activities going on. You've got the reservation for the ballot initiative and everything. Is there a drop-dead date on the IGA getting done so that you don't actually go to the ballot, or?
That's a good question. The ballot language has to be completed and approved by the 8th of September. So that's when the ballot language does. But I know the changes that's been drafted for the IGA is good for Colorado Springs. Now, the way the dollars would be split up is if we have, let's say we have an overage above budget of $10 million, as you know, it would be divided according to the percentages that are already in the policy. Does that make sense?
But I think what you're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, so the IGA is going to happen after the ballot language. In fact, that's the way it was done in 2012 as well. But if for some reason the IGA doesn't work out, then the money just goes back in to the fund. You can't spend it then on the project.
Okay, thank you.
All right, hold on. We've got questions. Brian's first.
Actually, it's more of just a statement. Most of you know that I'm exceptionally skeptical of most things, and I definitely don't like the fact that CDOT is, in essence, again, blackmailing the RTA. That said, nobody likes the situation, but it is something that has needed to be addressed for at least 20 years. We've known it. It needs to be done. Current dollars are better than future dollars, which are going to be inflated. We know that. This seems to me, especially after studying it for the last month or so, seems to be a reasonable and well thought out, actually, way of dealing with this gap. I especially like the idea of having, if you want to have like a high occupancy vehicle lane that you pay for to get faster access. I think that's all well and good, and that might be an interesting way of recouping or at least dealing with some of the dollars. But the details notwithstanding, the voters are going to decide on this, and that's the ultimate protection that I see. If the voters who we are supposed to represent feel it's not a worthy or is fraught with danger, then they'll vote it down. If they feel it's worthwhile and well thought out and necessary, then they will vote for it. So since it's going to the voters, I don't see any reason for us as a body to try and stand in the way of it. There's been a lot of work put in that we hadn't seen previously, that we've had a chance to vet over the last month or so. So despite my usual reservations and skeptical nature, I'm actually inclined to support this.
Tony?
Can I comment on
Okay.
Brian first? Brian, thank you. That you and I are probably came to the same conclusion. The only thing that I never do is I never say Mark has well thought out anything. But it's a very dangerous thing to do.
Or does my wife.
But I honestly believe, had this project been presented to us 5 years ago, it would have been on the A list, because we know we have the Cimarron Exchange on the A list. We have so that's why I'm willing to go back to the voters, because it wasn't there then, and it's a critical issue now. So we need to let the voters decide. So your point's well taken.
Tony?
I actually agree with Brian that this is I appreciate the fact that we're doing something, that we are working to get this done. I do have a couple questions and a couple of issues that I see that could crop up, and I'm sure you've thought of them, so I'm hoping you might be able to address them. What happens, I know you're trying to get Douglas County to get behind doing something of the sort. You're trying to get other groups, trying to get CDOT to say yes, they're going to do it. What happens if it doesn't, if it all falls apart, first of all?
The money goes back to the RTA fund.
Okay. And the other part is, we're talking about overages every year because the economy's good. Great.
Hey, Jim Godfrey really told me never ever use the word overages.
Okay,
Let's call it revenue above budget.
right. Revenue above what we expected.
That's what I've tried to.
Fair. But we also have costs above what we expected right now, because the inflation has been a little crazy on the construction side we're seeing. So some of that money, I imagine, was kind of earmarked for covering the inflation we've been looking at. So how will that negatively affect projects that are currently on the A list?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. The financial folks could correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think some of those unexpected additional costs are built into the original budget. And I know as we've been talking about the budget this year, right now the original budget was $89 million. And please understand also, this isn't one of those circumstances where we're going to budget at $80 million to ensure that money's there. That just wouldn't be, I think that would lack transparency and integrity with the voters, and I don't think that'd be right to do at all. But I think right now the budget for this year, $89 million. Well, I think we're currently sitting at about $101 million. I think it's 101, Reb. It's close.
Budgeted at 100, but there's a million. It's trending at $1 million or more.
Okay.
Above that.
There you go. Boy, it's easy talking a million when we're spending other people's money, isn't it? It's but so no, I don't think I don't think that is going to have an impact that way. Have we tried? We've tried to write the ballot language and the IGA as tight as we possibly can to make sure that we have some intellectual honesty and integrity in what we're doing. But can we account for every single little circumstance? No, probably not. There are good lawyers that can figure out how to get around things.
Okay.
Those lawyers.
All right. Dr. Null, Toby, John.
Well, I'm a little chronologically gifted, but I do remember when people used to come to the door and petition stuff on. And it was very effective because people always have their gripe, and almost always roads are. And it takes a group of people organized to do it, but it was very successful in the early years. I haven't had anybody come to my door and ask for money in a long time, unless it's my wife.
Are you telling a politician you're willing to write a check there, Dr. Knoll? Because, boy, that's a dangerous place to be.
But in a sense, I think people forget the community spirit that was in this community some time ago. But we had petitions. When's the last time someone had a petition come to your door? I can't remember.
They're all in the Walmart parking lot
Sign it,
now.
and they get that list, and then they leverage it for the money. I know that's hard, and you need a few people, but now if they say we need money, they just turn their ears and walk away. It's hard.
Toby?
Commissioner Waller, well, actually everyone, as soon as I get done with this meeting, I have a meeting in Denver, so I'm going straight up I-25, so we'll see how it is. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Will I be there on time?
Know this. The 4 worst days to drive on I-25.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Nope. I'm absolutely shocked by this. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The 4 worst days to drive on I-25, so you're in a little better shape today. As long as there's not an accident in the gap, you're good.
That's true.
We got to cut off this religion stuff.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's fine.
Hard time.
One of your earlier comments was, the first time I've heard about this, is that you're also looking at going for Tabor excess funds from El Paso County to put into the project also. And I guess the one question I have for you in that regard is that I still get a lot of comments from citizens, out in eastern El Paso County, both from roads and also from parks. And is any of that excess funds going to be directed toward roads in eastern El Paso County and also with some of the county parks that are in need of money also? I realize the need on I-25. There's no doubt about it. But also we need to look at the need for the citizens in El Paso County for both roads and parks.
All right.
I'd say that too. I found before that going to the door and knocking on it and asking for something for the community. And then when you get, I know you need people to do that, but they do, and everybody particularly knows what's going on what roads. And if you pick those areas that they know are a problem of bumper to bumper and so forth, I bet you'd collect quite a bit of money to support it, and they'd talk to their neighbors about it.
All right. So let me.
All right. Gentlemen, I'd appreciate it if all of you, and ladies, if all of you would respect their time, address your question or clarification, request for clarification, one at a time, and don't interrupt, okay? Sorry, Dr. Knoll. Joan, you're next. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Waller, you want to say something?
Yeah, please. I'd like to answer Mr. Tobias's question here. So first of all, I need to be really careful about how I talk about Tabor overages and what we're going to do, because we have done nothing yet. I can tell you what the discussions are, and I can tell you what this one particular commissioner wants to see happen. But at this point, it would be inappropriate for me to speak for the board. But, I think I got a pretty good idea where we're headed with this. But I just want to make sure I'm prefacing my comments with, we haven't done anything yet. We haven't settled on resolution language. We haven't even decided positively that we're going to the ballot. Now, I can tell you, do I think that's going to happen? Absolutely. This year, the overage money, it looks like it's going to be about $15.2 million. And so after you take out the cost of running the election, it's 14.8, 14.9 million this year. That's the number that would end up being on the ballot. In addition to asking for money this year, the discussion is, look, we need to reset the Tabor base, not do a Tabor timeout, not de-Tabor, not do anything like that, but simply reset the base. So what does that mean? Right now, the county's budget is about $320 million. This would allow us to reset the base. Instead of having the base be $320 million, it would be 320 million plus that 15 that we're asking to keep. And so the benefit of that then is we don't have these Tabor overage issues every single year moving forward for the next 5 or 6 years. And so really what this ends up meaning is, maybe 75 million more in money that's going to end up being in the coffers. Now, our discussions all along, and I'm a limited government Republican. I don't think you add FTE or things like that to grow government as a result of having increased revenue. But we went through a very serious recession where roads were neglected, parks were neglected, all sorts of problems that way. So the idea from the commission thus far, and that was a very good question, Mr. Tobias, is this needs to go into one-time expenditures, not continuing appropriations. So one-time expenditures, fixing roads, fixing parks, things of that nature. And so right now we're trying to figure out what's the absolute right balance. But I can tell you this, out of all that money, at most, half of it goes to I-25. A significant portion of it goes to other critical infrastructure needs, roads in the county. And then a smaller portion of it goes to parks and open spaces. We haven't sort of settled on what the exact right numbers are moving forward, but I anticipate that we will have that settled and those numbers will end up being in the ballot language to one degree or another.
I think you need to remind the citizens of the I'm sorry.
Dr. Null?
I think you
Dr.
need to
Null?
remind the
Dr.
citizens
Null?
of Monument Hill and the problems it caused. We used to go to door and ask that we had petitioners. You remember that? We would go around, they'd have and say, we want money for such and such, and they'd advertise it coming out, and that was pretty successful.
I'd like to address Dr. Knoll. Here's one thing I'm a little bit worried I'm not articulating this very well because I've heard you say it now, I think 3 times, the ask for more money. We're not doing that. The RTA issue is not asking for more money at all. We are not asking for any sort of a tax. I just want to make sure that this is clear if I didn't articulate it well. We're not asking for any sort of a tax increase. All we're doing is asking to have this project put on the RTA list. That's the ask from you all.
Joan?
I have some concerns. I understand where Brian is coming from and that ultimately the voters will make a decision. And that part I'm comfortable with. I think what bothers me with this is that we're even having to do it. We pay our taxes, they seem to go north up I-25, but have a heck of a time coming back down south. And that bothers me. Why, as taxpayers, and I think you've used the expression skin in the game, why should we have to? We pay our taxes. I understand budgets, I understand not enough money and so forth, but is this setting some kind of a dangerous precedent where we're letting the camel get his head in the tent, and that if CDOT thinks that RTA or the residents of El Paso County will bail out on this stretch, which needs to be done, there's no argument there. But are we setting a precedence that's going to come back to haunt us because they're going to continue to hold us hostage instead of doing their job?
Okay, I think there are 2 issues that need to be answered there. The first thing I would submit to you, you pay your taxes. It doesn't matter if they go locally, state, or federal. You pay them,
Right.
and you want results. And as I've talked to people out in the community, they don't sit down with their property tax or income tax bill or their sales tax and go through and say, now I know 3.2% of this goes to the city. I know 2.4% of it goes to the county, 2.4% of it goes to the state. Nope, they pay it, and they know they want results as a result of paying those taxes. So that's the first thing I would say. And the citizens of El Paso County pay taxes, and they want I-25 fixed. Those are two things that I know, that I, unequivocally and without a doubt. So that's the first thing I would say. Two, I get your point on our money going to Denver and not seeming to come back here. I agree with you. I hope I started off my comments that way, and if I didn't, I'm sorry. I meant to. We have 9 transportation districts in the state of Colorado. Our transportation commissioner is Rocky Scott. I've had numerous discussions with Rocky on this proposal. We've sat down, we've had lunch, we've had coffee, we've met numerous times to discuss this. I've had meetings with the Region 2 CDOT director as well. I've had meetings with other folks. I had meetings with the governor's office on this, the majority leader in the Senate, the Speaker of the House. Actually, I met with Cory Gardner, Senator Gardner, on this in D.C. Several months ago. And here's what we get. Here's what happens. So I went to Senator Gardner and said, look, I know when you were in Congress, you represented the folks in northern Colorado, and you guys got a project done. You're able to make it work. How did that happen? Well, he says, you need to go talk to some of the Weld County commissioners and folks along that corridor. You know how I-25 north of Denver, up into Larimer County, Weld County got done? Local skin in the game. Every single municipality in that corridor put money in that. From the smallest municipality, there was one municipality that only put $250,000. I say only $250,000, but that was a lot of money to that municipality. They put that in, and they got that project done by coming to it with local money and pushing hard then to leverage that local money to get the state and the federal government to live up to their obligations. This isn't precedent setting in any way. This is how it is being done. Rocky says to me, he says, how can I go to the other 8 transportation commissioners in this state and say, look, support this project when there isn't one local leader in El Paso County or in the Colorado Springs area that's willing to support a tax increase? And I'll tell you, I am not willing to do that because I think the revenue's there without doing it. And if you're not willing to put local skin in the game, how do we get there? How can I make that pitch to the other transportation commissioners? And I'll tell you what, I'd love to stand on my laurels and say, you know what, you just need to do it anyway. But there's reality associated with that, and the reality is it ain't happening if we don't come to it. And believe me, this isn't precedent setting. It's already happened. Brian said it earlier, Cimarron, Fillmore. Those are local circumstances where it's happened. I mean, you think there isn't going to end up being any local money in Powers when it gets done? $900 million to take care of the needs associated with that? It's how it gets done.
Yeah, I don't like it either, but it's the game we have to play. Let me tell you who we're competing against. We're competing against the Denver Area Council of Governments, Dr. CAG, it's called. We have the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. We're competing against Denver Area Council of Governments. 27 municipalities are jurisdictions in that, including Denver, Aurora, Boulder, Lakewood. You can go down the list. We don't like it, but it's the game that has to be played. We can fight it, and then it just goes on forever and nothing ever gets done. Or we can accept where it's at and then work through our election process to change the legislation that takes place up there. But for us to say we're not putting in a dime means it's not going to happen on a timely basis, in my opinion. So.
Thank you.
And I'll tell you, just to piggyback on that, Dr. CAG would like nothing more than us to not come to the table with anything, because then we get nothing and they get everything. And it's unfortunate.
It is.
It stinks.
It is unfortunate.
Believe me, I've had this discussion with the governor's office. I've had it with Crisanta Duran, Democrat from Denver, who is the Speaker of the House.
Gene?
I've got a couple of questions, and mine are sort of down in the weeds because I've learned over the years that the real issues are buried in the details. One of the questions I have is that on paragraph 5.1.1 of the IGA, you used the term collaborative regional project.
I addressed that already. I'm going to point out to you. That is there were 4 projects under PPRTA 2 that were listed as collaborative projects.
Okay, what's the meaning of a collaborative regional project?
It is one
And
where,
where is it defined?
okay, Rick,
Well, and maybe might I make a suggestion this way? Instead of us trying to make uneducated declarations on what this means, maybe those sorts of questions are best reserved for an email that we can get to the attorney, Jennifer Ivey, who has drafted this language, and then can get us the good answers back that way. I'd hate to somehow speak out of turn this way and say something that's not correct that's been prepared by our lawyer. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm an attorney, but not a IGA writing attorney, and so I know when I shouldn't speak out of turn. That's for sure.
I can give you some examples. West Colorado probably being the strongest one. It's right now, currently, if you haven't driven it, I'd ask you not to drive it. The West Colorado, or Manitou Avenue, is in Manitou. It's coming into the county. Half of it's in the county, and the other half's in Colorado Springs as it comes onto Colorado Avenue. So that's an example. Mark Sheffel North, Mark Sheffel South was divided as a collaborative project. So those are 3 examples of some work that we've done in a collaborative mode.
Well, it's not that I need examples. I want to know what the legal definition of it is and how it's applicable here and what it means with regard to distribution of
I
funds.
agree with Mark. We'll get it from
Yes.
an email and clarification by the
That's a good
PPRTA.
question, and that's the right answer, is to
Yes, we can refer that to the attorney and have that addressed next week at the board meeting. But I've handed out to you the wording of the 2012 ballot measure, and you'll see on it's two-sided, but you'll see on the side that has 5A, you'll see it near the top, about an inch down. It says regional collaborative projects under the priority A list. So that's the same wording that was used in 2012. So the PPRTA attorney has used that for now. I don't know legally if that's essential. I think it could come out, but the other issue is in your packet for the ballot language, which I'm anticipating I'm going to get a question on it, so I'll go ahead and address it while I'm up here, is the last 2.5 lines, and this is the second sheet of your packet, where it says, with this project being eligible for funding at any time regardless of the status of the previously approved priority A or B projects, that is her legal attempt, her attempt legally to have this not cloud the A to B sequence. You'll remember, and that's on the back side of your ballot measure at the bottom. That's using the same wording for the PPRTA 2 list as we used in the PPRTA 1 list, where it says, with priority A projects being completely funded prior to going to the B. What's the definition of completely funded if this money is not being used and all the other projects are ready to go to the B, but this project is not quite ready and this money isn't used? Does that cloud moving from the A to the B if all the rest of them are ready to move to the B? This is the attorney's wording to have this one project set aside and not in the A and B sequence, so it doesn't hold up moving from A to B.
Rick, could I ask for clarification?
Can I answer the regional thing? Sure. Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer. I just wanted to mention, as we identified projects for the 2012 ballot, when staff came to you and to the board, we identified 4 projects, and those were on the ballot list, as you see, and those were projects that were coordinated between member jurisdictions. So I think the attorney probably doesn't need to answer this, but just giving you some history, those were projects that either the city and the county were coordinating on, or the city, the county, and Manitou were coordinating on. So those were specifically identified as projects that we were collaborating on, and as we identified those budgets, money was coming from those each individual shares. So just some history on that. I don't think that was termed in any specific, other than the fact that we identified those as, and when you saw them on our projects list, they were actually joint projects originally. Thank you.
I want a clarification from Rick when he said something.
Sure.
So is this not a special class? In other words, here's the A list from PPRTA 2, and I'm just going to abbreviate and say 2.
Yes.
And here's the B list.
Yes.
This is set aside. It is, in quote, an A list and goes as soon as it comes. But this allows us to go to, Brian and I are on the B list. Maybe we were in time to get started after the A list is done.
I'm sorry, what was the punchline in the question?
Well, basically, we're done with the A projects, all of them.
Yes.
Okay? And CDOT hasn't decided to start.
Yes.
Or whatever.
Yes.
Can we start the B?
Yes.
And then, if CDOT comes along, is this going to, in other words, is this going to be held in abeyance for 10 years? In other words, like the Tabor Reserve that we have? Is that what's going to happen?
Well, no one has discussed a sunset, but the wording of the attorney is that this one project would be separated from the A-B sequence so that it's not holding up the A moving to B.
Okay, I did understand. All right, I'm going to let my questions go. Tom, you're next, then.
I wasn't done.
He had one more question.
I only got one question asked.
You said 2.
I said several. Leastways, if I didn't, I should have. You've answered one of them. It is not entirely clear from my first reading or second reading of the ballot issue concerning the category of project this is, but you've clarified that, and I think you're right. This sets up a third class of projects within the PPRTA, and one of which, and that class is funded regardless of where we are on the AB list. The next question that I have is that someone commented on how the $5 million over the two one-year periods was to be allocated among the member governments, and I didn't understand what was said. It was clear as mud to me. So where does this $5 million come from, and how does it affect the budgets of the member governments?
I'm going to see if I can try and explain it for Mark, the way I understand it. For the sake of discussion, our budget this year is $100 million, okay? That's the basis that we start from in September or November, is that right, Bev? We start from the base that this year's budget is, and it's been amended twice. It's about $100 million.
Well, sometimes we do if we think things are going to be, like if we have a drop-off at the end of the year in our sales and use tax, we might start at a lower base. We've done that in the past.
Right.
We don't just always take this year's and add 3% or something. We look at it in September and talk about what the sales and use tax budget is going to be for next year so that the member governments can start their budget process.
And the budget for next year is not actually approved until December. It comes to us in November for approval to be put forward to the board with our approval recommendation, and then the final budget is approved in December after a public hearing.
Yes.
Okay? Dr. Null, you're going to have to wait. We've got questions in line ahead of you.
I was wondering about an approach. There was a time for we old guys that if we had these kinds of problems, we'd ask the representatives down from the legislature. and talk to us in this group and find out how we couldn't get something done. Maybe something as drastic as that ought to happen because everybody wants to get reelected. Maybe they don't anymore. But it just seems to me when we have a board meeting, we ought to say, why can't we get this hill done? Why can't we get this road done? And then all of a sudden, everybody knows, they at least know about it, and it puts the pressure on them to do something. I just say that as a suggestion.
As a former legislator, I'll be happy to explain the dynamics to you. In the old days, who was in control of both houses? Republicans.
Yeah.
Guess who's in control now? Not Republicans.
It's hate to have all these citizens around here who might not vote for him.
I'm just telling you, I've had these discussions. I've had the discussions with Crisanta Duran, the Speaker of the House. I mean, I've been there. But if you think we're going to get Crisanta Duran down here, Democrat from Denver, who's the Speaker of the House, it just, I've had the discussions with our delegation, but they only have so much power. I mean, even the Senate Majority Leader, Republican from Parker, has called me and he said, Mark, I want to help you out however I can, but I've only got so much power. I don't control the House and I don't control the governor's mansion. And so I think, I appreciate the comment. I think things are a little bit different than they used to be. And it's frustrating because I wish, our folks were, folks that represented El Paso County were the folks that were the decision maker in every circumstance. But it's just not, the days of Ray Powers being the Senate president are gone.
Gene, have more questions? Skip.
Back to you on answering the question of how is the money pulled out and allocated to the member governments?
Yeah, and I'll take that. Off the top, and it's allocated based on their current formula.
Okay.
You done? Tom?
For the sake of time, yes.
I want to say that to ensure the integrity of the RTA and for future success of getting it through the ballot process, that I am incredibly happy that this process is going forward because it's public and it's difficult. And it keeps those little projects from wandering into the list that weren't on the list. And I think that that's a very positive thing, and it sets a great precedent. If we're going to make a change, we bring it back to the voters. That's all I want to say about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'd like to just real quick, because somebody said it, and I was going to comment on it and missed it. Understand, we're not creating a new list of projects. This is a complete set-aside, because this, moving from the A list to the B list, is dependent upon those projects being completed. This money isn't intended to complete a project. This money is intended to seed a project. And so it's outside of the sort of traditional project completion thinking. I hope that adds clarification.
Dave?
You said a couple things at the very start as far as people respect the PPRTA and what it's done and so forth. I think that goes all the way up down the Front Range. And one of the things, or how it's gotten there, is because it has been forthright with the voters and so forth. When they did the ballot issue originally and when they did the second ballot issue and so forth. And the other folks are right as far as doing the right process to get a ballot change or get the project changed. But I have a couple questions because I think it's very, very important so that we don't lose the confidence that we've gotten from the public, is that the ballot language is clear and succinct. And like when I read what's been put in here, you've said $5 million. Everybody said $5 million, but when I was talking with Jake, when I really read it, it almost sounds like 10.
It is. It's $5 million per year.
So that, to me, that should be, and I know this is beyond what we'll do, but that should be in the ballot. We're going to take potentially $10 million to seed this over 2 years, not $5 million. Because when they look at it if somebody reads it, like I did originally, I was like, $5 million,
But it says per year.
I know, but I just.
Well, and I'll tell you what, I mean, I appreciate that feedback because we want to be transparent, open, and honest with the voters. That's incredibly important here. If you have a suggestion for how to make that better, this probably isn't the venue to do that, but send us the suggestions. I mean, we've been round and round and round with this with the attorney. There's always this sort of conflict with making sure you get the ballot language right and as understandable as you possibly can, but keeping it short enough for people to be able to read it and understand it. And so there's that sort of a constant conflict there. I can tell you, I think this is pretty good, but it's and this isn't going to be to the voters, but that's articulated well in the IGA too.
I want to make an editorial comment, basically. No money was listed for any of the E or B projects in either 1 or 2, and it was done intentionally. Among other things, they aren't asking for money to do the whole project. In this particular case, it would be ridiculous because you wouldn't get a vote from me even. And seriously.
Not doing the $500 million.
I'm not. But seriously, none of those projects are listed, and you're seeing the results of it from the city and county projects that have already come forward, inflation. So what they did in 2012, they had a swag, okay? A guess at what the project would cost, maybe based on, well, there are several factors, with their experience far greater than ours. So they don't put a ballot price on it. And then lists are made by CTAB and HAC, primarily. And HAC, I know, goes from pretty much on what the county recommends, and they have a better view of what the public needs than we do as individual citizens. So this thing not being any dollars on that ballot, I think is the right move.
Well, it's not funding the whole project. He said it's seed money.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
So it's not to do the whole project. So we're not saying it's $10 million to do the project. We're not saying it's $5 million to do the project. We're saying it's $10 million seed money that's going to come away from other projects you've got.
No, and understand we're saying up to $5 million per. We're not saying $5 million per, up to, and it's only
Seed money. It's not to do the project.
that's right. And it's only revenue over budget.
Hire engineer.
And so we're trying to do that to avoid taking anything away from anything that is a current project. I mean, that's the goal.
Ed?
I've got more of a comment than a question, but, I trust the legal people to get the wording right and all of that, so, that's not my angle. But the economic factor is, and having worked with a company that's heavy into trucking and everything else, and that nature related to it, I know that if this isn't done, it's going to continue to cost this area a lot of money. And the thing about it, RTA thrives on the money from economic growth. And so for us to continually shut the door on this, slow it down, is going to keep Colorado Springs behind, and our brothers to the north, they'll continue to grow, and they'll get more of those businesses, more of the trucking. And so, I think it's worded reasonably. I think the voters are intelligent. I think we all want to see some good growth here. Brian, most of the voters are intelligent. But no, seriously, I really think it's time that we...
I don't know. I'm not sure intelligent voters would wear shirts like that. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke.
Rick?
I would like to make a motion to pass this forward for approval.
Do I hear a second?
I will second that.
All right. Everybody has 30 seconds to ask or seek an answer from Mark and Merv, and then we're going to vote. Start. Tony, anything?
Nope.
Toby? Jake? David? Joan?
No, but thank you, Commissioner, for answering my questions. I appreciate the clarification.
Thanks.
Dr. Null?
Soft enough.
Ed?
Thank you, Commissioner Waller.
Good.
Tom? Tom Hoover.
Yeah. 2 times.
Tom, I'm sorry.
Tom,
But-
Drumbeat.
Gene?
511 says that you can't spend money unless you fully fund the project. There's no exemption in here for the proposal for 25.
All right, I'll take care of that in a second. Scott? Rick?
Just thank Marv, Commissioner, for your time.
Thank you. And I would like to address Mr. Bray's question. Yeah, so I think that's right. This shouldn't be, if this project isn't going to be funded, that money should come back to the RTA and should be spent on other RTA projects. So if it's not fully funded, it's not that the RTA is fully funding it, which is the case with many projects that are partially funded by the RTA. But if it's not fully funded, no, the money shouldn't be spent. It should come back, and it should be put back into the fund and spent on other projects. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. At least that's my intent.
Call
The
the question.
concern that I have is that the money for the project gets spent incrementally over multiple years, and the seed money may be gone by the time it's not fully funded and falls through.
Yeah,
No, everybody's had their chance. Tom Rogers missed his, so go ahead, Tom.
Well, we've talked about how bad this problem is. Patterson just had a meeting, Realtor, said we had 4,000 people come in. We're expecting 6,000 this year. Most of these are being in the Northeast, and it's people traveling from Denver to come down here for our lower cost of living.
Bingo.
That clog's going to be really clogged.
Brian?
I'm actually hit on a point I was going to make. We've got folks moving down here from Denver because we have a better cost of living, even though it's increased. So I just want to thank both Mark and Marv for coming and talking to us about it and all the information that was provided to us.
Call the question.
Do I get a comment?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm going to anyway, thank you. I happen to know that they've had actually a little more time than we did in 2012 on 1A. It's a safety issue. I would like to know if there's been any indication given to either Mark or Merv, more likely to Mark, that you won't get approval by the other three member governments. Obviously, there's joint effort between the two, so I can assume you can crack the whip or do something. But how about the IG? I guess what I'm saying is, it concerns me. The voters go out and say, yeah, but one member government can say no. And when I say no, 2/3 of them takes.
1/3 of them can say,
1/3
1/3 plus one can say no. Yeah,
that scares me, because you're going to have in those two jurisdictions somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000+ voters.
Yep. And actually, I can answer that because that scares me too. And I wouldn't have put all this effort into making this happen if I didn't think that we would get that support and approval from those member governments. And so, again, I can't speak for those member governments, but I'll tell you what my perceptions are based on the discussions that I've had. Obviously, I think the Colorado Springs City Council is very supportive of this, as is the mayor of Colorado Springs, the president of the council, Richard Scorman, President Pro Tem Jill Gabler, very supportive of it as well. I can tell you the President Pro Tem of the El Paso County Commission really supports this, but he doesn't have a lot of credibility with other folks. No, there's certainly significant support there. I've been out to the Raymondtown Council. Spoke to them, and they have indicated support as well, as have I spoken with the Green Mountain Falls folks as well, and they've expressed support. And I've had significant discussions with Mayor Nicoletta from Manitou Springs, who has some concerns, but has certainly expressed support moving forward.
Okay. Dr. Null, you had your chance.
Yep. I would just say you consider petitioning on the ballot.
Dr. Null, you had your chance. It's over. It's been called to question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? It's unanimous, Rick. It's moved forward with a recommendation to the board. We'll present it to the board next Wednesday afternoon at 1:30 for your meetings too, right?
And could I just, once again, thank you. I'm terribly sorry for the lack of process and not understanding that moving forward. I didn't, once again, mean to cause a slight to this body in any way, and I certainly, I think I can speak for our entire board. We appreciate the hard work that you all do. I promise you, this is the right decision. We're moving the right direction, and thanks for your support.
All right, I had one question to ask.
We already moved on. I'm kidding. That was a joke.
I don't want.
That was a joke.
I don't want an answer. This is from Jim Godfrey, and it had nothing to do with taking a vote. Okay. Jim wanted to know what participation you might want from CAC in mounting a campaign of some sort, publicly or otherwise. And Mark, I asked that so you can prepare for it next. Did you understand Jim will be back next Wednesday, or is he going to be gone?
Back.
Okay.
So, and one of the things I neglected to say, this is, again, pulled at 88%, so I think we're in good shape. I think it's as much about not talking bad about it as it is talking good about it. And so having the unanimous support, I think, is incredibly gracious and helpful from that perspective. Our plan is to raise, somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 to mount this campaign, which is actually a fairly cheap campaign in today's terms. To put that in perspective, the stormwater folks, I think, are working on about a $300,000 to $500,000 campaign. So, we feel that we're in good shape, and I think the big part of this is, I think it's been pretty well vetted here. You ask great questions. Get out to your constituents and your communities and let them know that, what the thought process is. And please, if somebody has a question you can't answer or wants something else, send them my way. I'll be happy to talk to them. Actually, send them to Merv first, and then if they, no, I'm kidding. Send them my way. I'll be happy to talk to them.
I was going to send them to Rick Scorman. All right. That deals with number agenda item 5, and now we get to hear from the sweet young lady that always has good news. Good news, Bev.
Hey, Bev.
Good afternoon. First, I have to apologize because I have the memo from last month on here. And what happened is I did up a new memo, and it had number 5 on it. And when I got bumped from my place here of number 5, I just went in there and changed the July to number 6 and put it on top. So I'm either losing it or something like that. Anyway, on the sales and use tax, we have received May, and it was $8.665 million, or $370 above the monthly budget. And the new budget's in there at $100 million, so this is the first time you've seen this report with the second amendment monthly budget in there. And right now, we're almost $1.4 million ahead of the $100 million at 3.7. I don't know if you've read the paper today, but, and this isn't alarming or anything, but certain sales slowed down, like the sales of cars and some of the other increases in economic indicators are starting to slow down. So we'll be watching that, but unfortunately, we're only going to get one more month worth of sales and use tax before we come forward next month, to talk about the 2018 sales and use tax budget. So that's the way it happens, and sometimes we don't have a lot of good data from the end of the year. So anyway, page 2. We're ahead of last year by $3,451,000, or 9.8%. The next pages are the revenue and expense summary that just outline the budget and the changes in the budget compared to the actual. And then from page 6 on are to-date numbers from inception of the RTA to now for the capital projects. Are there any questions? It's a lot of numbers, but a lot of them are just kind of there for you to reference when you have a question or something. Any questions for me? I'll try to get, you're welcome, I'll try to get the right memo on next month.
All right. It's capital projects, maintenance and public transportation contracts, City of Colorado Springs. Mike Chavez.
Good afternoon, Mike Chavez, City Engineering. We have two items for your consideration today. The first one is a construction contract for the Pikes Peak Avenue project. We got bids in, and we actually got pretty good bids. Wildcat came in low at 12.5. Our engineer estimate and kind of the city guess was going to be around 15 to 16, so we're glad to see that. We're going to have to split this funding over 2 years, so in the memo I think we have in 18 we're going to need construction funding. We'll have to put in $6.8 million. But other than that, that was pretty good news. And then the other item is a change order for Anderson Masondale Architects for the pedestrian bridge. There's some design work on the west landing and also some additional design, wind tunnel testing to make sure that that thing is designed right.
Brian?
Mike, I just wanted to thank you and your staff for the additional information you guys have been supplying us in recent months with regard to things like this. It's nice to see the actually, flesh out the bids and a lot of the additional information. So thank you guys for doing that.
You're welcome.
Could I ask a question that isn't going to change anything? There seems to be about a 50% spread between the low bid and the high. I had a heck of a time answering my surety and bonding companies if we missed or low by 5% or more or above. I don't know how they're getting. Is this spread seem normal now?
Yes, typically we've seen, there's always some high ones, and this is not unusual. Some of these are from Denver, and that's not.
Literally, if you got it at your price, you'd be happy, but if you don't get it, you're not really unhappy.
Yeah. I suspect Wildcat's got 3 big projects. They finished Mark Shuffle. And they've got Woodman halfway done. So I think they were just trying to line up. So they sharpened their pencils, and we like that.
All right. Are you going to address the second item?
He's got a question.
Quick question.
Okay. Sorry.
You have a column on the handwritten page that lists the bids out that says total bid with alternative items used. And in that case, Wildcat's not low. Or if I can read the writing correctly, they're not low. What alternative items may be used or may not be used, and once the contract is let, is it the total bid base with no alternative items?
So the alternative item was basically doing the road in concrete as opposed to asphalt. We've been trying to see if we can get some bids, and so we decided, we didn't want to spend an extra $3 million to go to concrete, so it's the construction package will be $12 million, and the road will be in asphalt.
You jogged my memory. That came up last month. Thank you.
Okay, Tom, did you have a question?
No, I was just pointing out
Oh,
Gene's.
I see 2 Toms. You guys have got to sit on opposites.
You just use last name, Roger.
All right. How about the bridge? Does anybody want to comment? All right, I'm gonna make a comment. This is coming from Mr. Godfrey, who could not make it here. I hope I can pull this thing up. All right, basically, I'm going to word it for him. He takes exception to the project being listed as a PPRTA project, and it's because it is not specifically listed as an A-list project. So he'd like the wording on it for historical reasons, nothing to do with whether the money goes, but for historical reasons, he'd like it to be listed as an additional funding of the PPR by the funding. It's not a base funded. Rick, I got to pull out that. Hang on, I'll give the wording of it. I would personally like to see the memo state that the board, no, that's the wrong one. Here it is. The Colorado Springs pedestrian bridge. I object to the wording in the memo's project description describing the project as a PPRTA-funded pedestrian bridge. It is not. Partially funded, yes, but I don't feel that historical records should state that this is funded by PPRTA. It was not an approved project, and he's got project in quotation marks in the ballot. And while the form does mention that other funds are being used, I would like to see the wording in the first sentence of the memo changed to say PPRTA is only a contributing funds to this project. Does anybody have any problem with that?
Which one?
What Commissioner Waller was kind of referring to, too, is that it isn't an identified project, and to
That's
state
one.
it as a funded project by PPRTA is an overstatement.
Partially funded, yeah.
Does anybody have any objection to make that recommendation to the board going forward?
I guess my question or concern is that we have traffic projects that are not listed, but, we have an intersection and it's funded. Sometimes we use RTA match. HES is a good one, so I guess if we're starting to parse everything, I guess I'd be a little concerned of, is it create an issue?
And Mike, I agree with you, but this has been a hot potato, and
Well, let's let that potato cool.
I think.
How about partial? I like partially funded.
Partially funded,
I think that would,
is reasonable.
Yeah,
and
we can do that.
It does provide some cover for folks who are not comfortable with the way this was handled. So I think the partially funded would hopefully deal with both sides. It addresses your concern, but also allows people who had their concerns about the way this came about and the way it's being handled, and it's accurate. So
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. Rick, you have a comment? I gotta find it.
CAC asking that Mike revise the contract cover sheet in the project description to say, in the first line, headed to the second line, Pikes Peak Greenway Southwest Downtown Pedestrian Bridge is a PPRTA funded pedestrian bridge, to say partially funded, put partially funded somewhere in that sentence?
Just change it.
PPRTA
It's a
partially funded.
Funded bridge by the PPRTA.
Okay. So, Mike, can you change that for in the morning or this afternoon?
We also have a walk-on, do you know that?
I was not aware of, so I'll let Dave.
We're going to vote this one? We're going to vote this one?
It's all 7.
Oh, is the walk-on the same thing?
Yeah, same,
Okay.
it's the same, I think it's a construction project.
Okay.
And when I say that, we will have to bifurcate, so maybe do I have to add an agenda item?
No.
Okay,
An additional contract just falls under the umbrella of the one-line agenda item. Was that your question?
well, it's an additional contract, but it's an exception. I'd want it bifurcated. Leave it as item 7A, okay? Can you provide written or an email to the member? Okay,
Yes,
all right.
certainly will.
Did you discuss this with Rick at all? Whoops.
I'm sorry, Rev, what's the question?
Well, he doesn't even have a printed thing, okay, of any sort. I didn't get it. I apologize.
Sitting right to your left.
I apologize. I'd already put it in my book. Okay.
Carry on.
Lieutenant.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm David Scalfrey with Public Works Operations and Maintenance Division. And our division is needing to perform a pipe lining of a 883 lineal feet run of 24-inch diameter corrugated metal pipe. And this pipe runs along South 26th Street from Colorado Avenue to the Fountain Creek Bridge. The reason this project is being walked on is due to the fact that the final 300 feet of that pipe was plugged with, or partially plugged with rock, sediment, and debris. So we got that finally cleaned out late Friday, finished the assessment, put bid docs together, and went out to bid on Monday. Bid docs, or the bids close on Monday, August 7th, and we're prepared to present an award on Wednesday to the PPRTA board. So with that being said, the reason that we're presenting this document is to make you all aware and to ask you all for requesting a preliminary approval of an expenditure not to exceed $200,000. This is based on our engineer's estimate for the project.
I will point out to everybody one thing. This is a maintenance, not a capital project, point one. So, quote, where they spend their maintenance money is not up to us. Okay? Scott?
I would just ask that the memo be updated to specify where this is. You told us it was
Yes, sir.
26th Street, but that's not anywhere in the memo.
Yes, sir.
That's right, it didn't do that.
And it is a roadway maintenance project. Why?
I'm
It
sorry?
is.
It is roadway maintenance. Why?
Is it roadway maintenance?
Yeah, this is a
It is
maintenance.
roadway maintenance
It's
because.
maintenance. Why is this a roadway maintenance issue?
Because the CMP is under the road. If it fails, the road fails.
He said it was adjacent to, not under.
It does run along the roadway. In other words, it does run along the west gutter line. It is in the street, and it impacts the street.
Okay, thank you.
Would you be willing to amend this sheet and add a map, please, for
Yes.
in the morning for the board?
Absolutely will. Yes, sir.
All right. Is there a motion to
So moved.
move what?
Second. To approve all,
All
everything
three
presented.
as presented
Come
The
to,
recommended changes.
with recommended changes.
Yes.
Is that all right, Tom?
yes.
Tom, TV versus TR. You made the motion.
I did. My motion is that it be approved with the recommended changes. before
Okay,
it goes
and
to
now
the
it's
board.
approved by Tom Hoover.
My initials are TAR, that's what people call
Well,
it.
I like picking on Mr. Hoover. I'm sorry. Are there any objections? All approve, please.
Say aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr. Chair, could we take a 5-minute break, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. We are adjourned for 5 minutes. We will meet back here at 5 minutes past 3.
Not fun, is it?
Where he's
So I'm
coming from today.
I'm coming through the long way. But we're all going together, nobody's passing anybody. How fast are we going?
It took us over an hour or two.
The whole, what? 100 even on the speedometer. And I mean, as far as you could see, everybody was doing 100 even. on the south.
No, I'm with you. I'm with John too. It absolutely, but they said it, I didn't have to say it. It's an unfortunate reality that we're having to deal with. And it absolutely drives me up a wall because I hate those people up there.
You were in this.
And they are, this is blackmail, green mail, call it what you want, but if we don't do it.
Coleman is never going to stop anybody in that line, or they'll have it backed up and accidents.
Damn right.
I've been 10 years with him.
The speed of that based on population. How they'll break out the. So it'll be the same.
We can actually see.
So like, for some reason, we seeing it on
This would excess revenue. In order to amend the budget and distribute it this way, well, they want to do the exact same thing. As they get excess revenue, they'll allocate up to $5 million
The powers.
based on that same allocation.
The way he explained it, it was clear.
Yeah, the explanation wasn't too clear.
And neither CDOT nor FHWA will allow you to start construction on a project until you complete it. It's not like they would start the project and then be stuck in the middle of it. You have to prove that you've got the project set aside.
So before an environmental impact's done.
Well, the environmental impact is going forward now. That's being funded by CDOT. And then once if there's money identified, they can move forward to the design.
Have you heard what group is trying to put that factory on the news between here and Denver?
It's kind of pie on the sky. We can't even come up with $300 million to widen 18 miles of roadway. We're never going to come up with billions of dollars we need for rail.
Well, what I was wondering is if they were going to use the existing rails, since the coal trains are going down pretty substantially.
Yeah.
Use the existing rails.
It's gone back and forth. At one time, there was this eastern corner where they wanted to rebuild all the freight rail out east and then use the existing front range rail lines for commuter rail. But neither of the freight companies were, it's like, well, if you want to build that for us, we'll consider it. We're not going to.
There's no way you're coming downtown.
Your trains carry part of the state, we bypass it.
Is there, if you have a dedicated
Well, the thing was, like you said, there's 12 transportation routes, 9. And you take Durango, that area down there, there's no way they can pay for their demand, their needs. So we have to help. What the only thing is
It's close to 3:05.
that Denver's
30-second warning.
percentage.
Well, no, half of them just walked out. I don't know.
I'm getting a drink.
What'd you do for the first 4.5 minutes?
I didn't know that's where Rocky Scott went either. I thought he moved to Oregon. He used to be the EDC down here.
Always brother later today.
I don't even see.
I think it'd be appropriate to come from that direction.
Boy, you have control. I mean, you have.
She was hiding behind the column intentionally. She likes to pick on poor old man. Sorry. Excuse me. I'm abused today.
You said it, I didn't, man.
All right,
I acknowledge it. All right, the meeting is back in order. We have in front of us Ms. Jen Irvin, El Paso County Engineering.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Advisory Committee, Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer. Today we just have one item from the county, and it's one of our capital projects on the capital project extension list 2015 to 2024. It's the Highway 105 project. And we're still in design, and we need to add some additional money to our contract with our design consultant to finish up the final design, do some property acquisition, and support additional survey and traffic work that we need to do. Just want to remind you that the overall project is on Highway 105 from I-25 all the way out to State Highway 83. We've done preliminary design on that entire portion, and this portion is to support finishing up the design of the first phase, which is from Lake Woodmore to Woodmore. So,
Rick?
Well, what kind of intersection arrangements are you going to make there at 83 and 105?
That is a CDOT county intersection, and they are in the process right now of designing a new signal at that location, so we are coordinating with them.
Okay, there's going to be left-hand turns and that sort of thing? Because that's good. I have a friend who, that's a good dead man spot.
I just went through that intersection myself this last Saturday, and yeah, definitely needs improvements, and I know that CDOT is going to initiate those improvements here in the next year or so.
That's good. They got that hill just north of that intersection, and they come smoking over that hill, and you're pulling on the highway. It's going to...
And go that way, Hunt. Any other?
I apologize, Mr. Chair. May I?
Go ahead.
What intersection was that you were just discussing?
83 and 105.
Okay. Sorry.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion for approval. Recommendation.
So moved.
Everybody.
Did somebody get who was? It was group effort.
Give Joni.
Okay. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you for your consideration. Also, can I take 1 minute? I just wanted to introduce somebody to you. Yes, I know, right? But I just wanted to take a minute to introduce somebody to you. As part of our reorganization in county engineering, I was able to essentially hire a deputy for that was much serving as many of the things that I was doing under Andre. So I just wanted to introduce Anton Ramage. He's my deputy county engineer. And he's been with me for a few months, and you might see him at some of these meetings, so I just wanted to make sure that you knew who he was. He's been a great help to me and really has helped move the engineering department forward in the path that we want to go. So,
Stalled before.
Reb, you're a troublemaker.
I know.
So what else is new?
So I just wanted to let you know so that you, when you see the face, you'll know who it is. And I'm very excited that he's here with me. Thank you.
We are too. Welcome. All right. Manitou Springs. Young lady is here, I thought. Oh, yeah. There she is.
Good afternoon, CAC members. My name is Shelley Cobo. I'm the Public Services Director for the City of Manitou Springs. I am asking you for a recommendation on 2 contracts associated with the Brook Street Bridge. The first contract in your packet is for a contract with a firm called Bohannon Houston, Inc., in the amount of $49,821. This would be a capital project, along with the other contract for your consideration, that it is on the ballot measure as an A-list project under Manitou Springs Downtown Sidewalk Drainage and Utilities Improvements. Our budget on that project is about $412,000. So through approval of these 2 contracts, we will be able to fix a bridge that's currently closed in Manitou Springs that also not only affects that bridge, which provides access to residents for fire protection, and it is also directly adjacent to Ruxton Avenue. So if that bridge were to fail, we'd have an avulsion in Ruxton Creek that could substantially have a significant impact on Ruxton Avenue and all points downstream. So this has been an arduous and long-debated project in Manitou Springs. The bridge was damaged in the April 2015 flood events. So it's important to us to move this forward, and we're looking for your support in doing so.
Brian?
I want to thank you so much for the detailed information you provided, and I want to commend the folks at Manitou Springs for making a costly but good decision to rehabilitate the historic bridge rather than just getting rid of it. I think that it'll benefit Manitou in the long run by maintaining some of its historic character in that regard. So thank you again very much.
Concur, and thank you for the support.
Joan?
I would move to adopt both contracts as presented by the City of Manitou Springs.
Second.
I have a question. These are not marked as capital, maintenance, transit.
She clarified that.
She clarified that as capital.
Capital. Okay.
And I'm learning, I told Rick, one of these days I'll bring these forward and it will be complete and Man, I
That's
managed to miss something
overrated.
every single time, sorry.
That's overrated.
You will find something.
Rick looks for Manitou Springs. I look for Colorado Springs. I have a question. Do you need people with chronological experience doing this type of a bridge?
Oh, gosh.
Don't
That was
answer
a
that.
rhetorical question.
Don't-
Okay, there has
don't
been a
encourage
motion
it.
and it's been seconded, and we didn't take a vote, did we?
Not yet.
No.
All in favor of approving a recommendation, positive recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
All
Thank-
opposed?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
City of Colorado Springs, and I see Brian, I think, yeah. Brian? I got this presentation yesterday. You did? Poor guy.
Good afternoon. Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metro Transit with your monthly transit report. For our fixed route services, we saw an increase of 6.4% for June of this year as compared to June of last year. And again, this is the second month in a row that our boardings per revenue service hour are higher than last year's for the same time period. So we're not only carrying more customers, but we're becoming more efficient at it. For our ADA power transit services, we saw a very slight decrease of just about 0.5% over that same time period. And for our van pool services, again, there's a 14% decrease from June of this year as compared to June of last year. For a project update, last year the downtown transit station relocation study was conducted. We ended up just this past fall with 3 final sites to move forward with. The mayor appointed a steering committee early this year to look at prioritizing those 3 sites. And the steering committee presented to the mayor on July 17th and provided their recommendation. So the recommended site, the top priority site, is site number 8, and that's the location in the southwest corner of Colorado, Sawatch, Cucharas, and Sierra Madre. It's where there's an old book warehouse and a piano store and old U.S. Postal Service maintenance facility.
Does it take that whole ball?
So it was by far the top ranked site out of the other 2. The second site is where the old Colorado Springs Health Partners site is, and the Colorado Springs Independent. And then the third site, which was a distant third, was the 2 blocks of Pueblo Avenue. And so many of these sites have been recycled in the 6 previous studies over the last 18 years. So it's we're actually getting a little bit closer to getting out of where we've been for the past 40 years. So it's an exciting moment.
Does that include the old Ross auction site and the, there's a U.S. Postal Service.
Right. It's a maintenance facility. Yes, yep.
So all of that's going away?
Well, it's 3/4 of the block. There's 2 out parcels that are in the northeastern corner of that block. They're just surface parking lots for the businesses on the east side of Sawatch. But we're proposing to take 3/4 of the block. There is potential for the other 2 owners to, perhaps become part of this project, but what we need for our facility would just be 3/4 of the block. So we will be presenting or seeking a council resolution of support at the council work session on August 21st. And we have a lot of work to do, a lot of support that we're going to need. There's going to be public-private partnerships involved in joint development, and a lot of new territory that the city and especially transit's never really been into before. So it's going to be a challenging, complicated, but rewarding experience, I'm sure. So look for more on that in the future. And we just held 3 public meetings last week for one additional service change improvement for this fall. And we're proposing to add, and this is your excess revenue, PPRTA Amendment 2 money going straight to work.
We don't.
Above budget, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We do not use the term excess.
Right. We are proposing to add one vehicle into the operation of routes 10 and 11, and they currently operate from our downtown terminal down to Pikes Peak Community College, but they share the South Nevada corridor from the terminal to Southgate Road. We've been experiencing a lot of on-time performance issues with both of those routes. There's a lot of activity on South Nevada, very busy corridor. We carry an awful lot of riders on that section, and we're really having a hard time keeping it on time. And there's really no good way to restructure the routes, make them shorter or whatever, without impacting our customers. So, absolutely, yep. And so by adding one more vehicle into the lineup, we'll be able to add more recovery time on both ends of the line and keep both of those routes on time. So it's PPRTA money is funding this, as I said, and that will go into effect Sunday, October 1st. And there was no opposition to that because it's a good thing. Our customers see the benefit of that, and there was no opposition. So we're recommending approval. Are there any questions or comments?
No, thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
City of Colorado Springs, El Paso, county plan for spending remaining PPRTA 1 capital projects funds. This is Jennifer.
Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer. I spoke with Kathleen and Mike earlier today, and we are hoping, we do not have a recommendation as of yet. We are still working on that, and we are hoping to come back to you next month with this item.
Is there any other for a party with the CAC, including the administrative staff? Never mind.
Say goodnight.
You're talking about Mark Schaffel.
Yeah.
All right.
If
Thank
there's
you.
any other questions, hopefully next month, and we'll come back to you when we have a good recommendation put together.
No recommendation. Miss Rick?
You ready for 9A?
Yes, please.
The report of the highlights from the board meeting of July 12 are in your packet. I welcome any questions. Just information? Yeah, two-sided. Always check for two-sided.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Viersma, hang on.
I thought it'd be without a question.
Yeah, I've got one question. I've got a presentation I'm giving about transportation this coming Saturday. Can I mention the ballot issue?
Yes.
Yeah, that would come under communications, though.
Is it fair game to talk about it publicly? Is that, sure.
Public meeting?
Agenda.
Oh, cool. 100 people showing up. And I'm getting-
Agenda topics for the next meeting. Are there any topics for the next meeting, next month's meeting, that anybody would like to go? And now you're answering your question, Tom, under communications.
I'm sorry. What I said before.
Yes, same response.
Thank you.
It's probably not necessary to mention, but we should probably be very careful about what we do say and we don't want to get too much into the weeds before everything's actually a little bit more solidified.
I would say discretion's the better part of valor.
Misinformation.
Yeah.
But very few people,
Are aware.
well, no, we'll even find a link to get the minutes.
Don't put the cart before the horse.
Anything else? We are adjourned 10 minutes early in spite.
Firm Rapids, Apple, we're out of here.
That's it. Well, have a good month. Done city.
All right.
On behalf, we're also in the process
Hey, Jones.
of reorganizing.
Teresa's sister bought a house down there by you.
Over the last
She's
meetings, a lot more public engagement,
going south of you.
accompanying
Hey, Rick. There's that little
your district. We were at the meeting also identifying the individual members and giving us the tools to answer
Same last
questions,
name as
things like that.
Ward.
Right along.
So you'll see it on the paperwork.
attending
She's
their
having
staff
it
meetings,
refurbed right now to rent.
budget issues.